Gospel according to St. Luke, the 10th chapter. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. But few things are needed, indeed only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which shall not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and mercy are yours from the triune God. Amen. Hosting is truly an art. Good hosting, I mean. People who have sort of thought through the details in a way that makes people exhale a deep sigh of relief when they are in a space. Almost like they have less to worry about. And that's a gift, right? Do we know people like that in our lives? Maybe you're one of those people. And as someone who works in the church, it's always something I sort of pay attention to because it's a gift. It's really special, and it's who we are as Christians for sure. There are very few places in the life of the church where greater hospitality is shown than during funerals. Now, I've done a lot of funerals. And funerals can be really stressful and difficult times for people for all the obvious grief-filled reasons. But there are also a lot of decisions to be made alongside that grief that can be overwhelming. There are sometimes these pressures that we feel to honor our loved ones and to do it right. Or how they might want it, would have wanted it to be done, right? And churches get this remarkable opportunity sometimes to walk in those spaces and take a little bit of that burden off of people's shoulders. And in that small ecosystem of the funeral, there are no, I think, greater demonstrations of hospitality than the funeral reception. The time when church folks, I call them church saints, drop their lives and all they are doing to pitch in and set up tables and bring sides and get sandwiches put together and find someone to make desserts. And they decorate, make sure that there are the right amount of chairs and all of that. And when you are in the midst of a trained group of church reception people, again, saints, doing this work, it is a truly remarkable sight to behold. They can organize a 100-person party in 2 days, and it's incredible. And there's always a head saint. Who's known a head saint? Yeah, there's head saints. Or like a hospitality chair, maybe. Sometimes they only do funerals. It's just their thing, and they are good at it, you know? And once upon a time, I had the privilege of pastoring one of the best to ever do it. And her name was Janice, St. Janice. And Janice had phone trees and a system that made everything seem effortless. I would call her on the phone and I would say, "Hey, we have a funeral on Wednesday." And she would ask, "How many? Do they want dessert and coffee or a lunch? And what time?" And that would be it. And she would hang up and say, "See you Wednesday. I got it from here." And I didn't have to think about it. And people would show up, and it was amazing. Amazing. And one day, Janice just couldn't do it anymore. And so, in great trepidation, but under her tutelage, a new head saint needed to rise through the ranks. St. Clare. And Clare was stressed, nervous. And she wanted to do a good job. I know that. And during St. Clare's first reception, I got a call from some other concerned saints at the church who had done a lot of these receptions before to let me know just how stressed Claire was and how that stress happened to be landing on somebody else, these other saint receptionists. This is a very dangerous time for a pastor. Apparently, Claire was giving off the impression that other folks didn't quite care as much as she did, when in reality, they just weren't as stressed because they had done this a lot of different times. But this was her first time as head of hospitality, and her anxiety was leaching off in some not so helpful ways. You'd understand what I'm saying. So I gave her predecessor, St. Janice, a call and asked her to call St. Claire, just check in and reassure her of the team's desire to help. And in the process of doing that, Janice also was able to share why she liked helping with funerals, where she saw God moving, how it made her feel to be a spectator and participant in something so beautiful. And after that conversation, the reception went great. The sandwiches were made, the potato casseroles with the cornflakes were on top, the cookies were fine with coffee, and the family had a space to share stories with one another for a few hours after the service. And of course, Jesus showed up for the whole thing. It was awesome. It always is. Now, I want to do a quick survey. Who likes this text? You guys like this text? We're so-so. This is so-so. I'm very so-so. It's a hard text. It's hard for a lot of people. And here are the reasons why it's hard for me. The Martha, Martha sounds condescending to my ears. And this word better, as in Mary has chosen the better, and it will not be taken from her, makes it feel like the two sisters are competing in there. I don't think they are, but it sounds like they're competing. And I think both of these parts of the text, at least for me, boil down to some implicit feelings I might have with shame. Shame. I want to measure up, right? Like Claire, I just want to do as good of a job as Janice. And so here in this story, Martha is running around the house and washing dishes and cooking and setting out enough chairs and getting dates on a plate or something last minute. And she is used to doing these things well, right? She is good at this. She is very capable. She is a capable person. This short story that Jesus tells, or that we hear about in Luke, it says that Jesus came into Martha's house. Martha's house, not her brother Lazarus, and not her husband's. Martha's. It was her house. She is an independent woman with means. Maybe she had a business. Maybe she was a widow and now is managing an estate. In any case, Martha is independent. She can handle her stuff, right? Which is honestly pretty cool. And Jesus is there, and so, of course, as a capable person in first century Palestine, where hospitality is huge, the cultural expectation says that she has a lot to live up to. She is concerned about not measuring up. I mean, just look at our first reading. Strangers come by and can unexpectedly begob. Surprise, Martha. It's funny how history repeats itself, right? Jesus is God. And now, in all this stress, in all this cultural expectation, and all this anxiety, and all that potential for shame, she looks over at her sister Mary, and she is just sitting on the ground listening to Jesus and not helping. I'd be mad. And it doesn't say that she was angry, and it doesn't say she thought she was lazy, and it doesn't say very much. It says, Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help." And maybe she was just asking for help to be a good host, but reading between the lines, I wonder why she would triangulate Jesus into this mix if there wasn't some anxiety and resentment as well. If we had any doubts about those feelings, Jesus' response makes that anger and tough feelings we get from Martha a little more possible. Martha, Martha, he says. And the perennial joke here is one of Marcia from the Brady Bunch, like Martha, 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 in a way that makes it sound like Jesus is sort of just tisking her, or like Martha, you idiot, or Martha, you incapable fool, or Martha, you fussy, silly woman. But that's not the case. That's not what's going on here. That's not what Jesus is doing. When folks repeat themselves in the Bible, it's a tool to draw attention to the hearer, and it means to add emphasis to what's going on. And in this case, Jesus' main concern here isn't condemnation or shaming. It's compassion. It's kindness and love for Martha. And not in a condescending way either, but in a way that recognizes the stress and obligations and responsibilities that Martha really has and feels. And like the women who recognize the stress and anxiety and hardship that my friend Claire was feeling, and like Janice, who knew firsthand all that went into organizing the receptions and called her on the phone with great kindness and love, Jesus talks to Martha knowing all the stress and complicated feelings that go into the expectations put on her by the culture, and he has compassion for her. Martha, Martha, oh Martha, he says, I'm so sorry. You are worried and you are stressed, and this is hard, and I see that. But we're all right, and we have what we need here. I think if we look at this in a different light than the one we might be used to, Jesus saying that Martha has made the better choice by sitting at Jesus' feet and learning isn't the sibling competition that we make it out to be, or at least it doesn't have to be. I think we can see it as an invite to Martha to pause and become a guest of God, even in the midst of our responsibilities and tasks we feel that we need to complete. I think maybe Jesus here is inviting Martha in her own home to let him host her. Jesus isn't saying that hosting and making people feel comfortable is of lesser value than the learning and contemplation we witness in Mary. I think it is more recognizing and defending the state of mind that Mary finds herself in at the feet of Jesus. One of knowing the presence of God in front of her and letting it work on her heart to change her. One of being fed by the great host. One of being a guest at God's own table. Jesus' compassion for Martha is an invite to sit down and see that as well. Taking care of people is good. Hosting and loving people is a good thing. Showing up and setting up tables and plunging toilets and organizing coat drives and showing up at city council meetings to defend the cast aside is good. But we have been frustrated and resentful, and all there is to do too, right? Caught up in 1,000 different things and moving too fast, and with a checklist that grows faster than we can cross things off, we are blinded and we forget to see the presence of God right in front of us and the banquet of grace that we get to enjoy. I've been there. When Janice called Claire to chat, I think it helped center her. I don't assume there was like finger wagging or you ought to's involved. I think it was mostly just helping her friend see again what was really happening here at these receptions and why these receptions were important. I think it helped Claire, the new head saint of receptions, see God in front of her in the midst of some of the tasks. These receptions, after all, are not ever going to be perfect. Our reception last week wasn't perfect. It was very good. This was just old church receptions, right? With, fake flowers on the table and plastic tablecloths and round cramped old folding metal chairs in a weird big room. But God shows up around those plastic chairs and folding tables. And in ham sandwiches and butter rolls that are served on cheap buns, and in pictures and laughs of friends in old reception halls with mismatched paint on the walls. And Claire and Janice and Carl and Marlene and Clark and all these other saints of the receptions were not only the hosts with lots of responsibilities, they were guests sitting at the feet of Jesus. They had first row seats to what God was doing. And they saw healing and love and kindness being shared, and they got to participate in it. And the superpower of this group was not running a perfect reception. It was being loved and taught by God while loving others. It changed them. In our world today, there is much to do. There is a lot of hosting to be done. There are many people to care for. There is a great need for kind, brave, and resourceful people. And by looking at the harshness of the world, it can feel overwhelming and full of anxiety, and the checklist goes on and on forever, and it feels like there's no one else who cares quite as much as we do. It can feel that way. But we are indeed called to care. We are called to welcome and invite our neighbors, strangers, and those well known to us, and to treat them with compassion and love. We are called to share generously what we have. But in the process of doing that, let's not forget that we are also guests of God and witnesses to all that Christ is doing right in our midst. Let us not forget to feast at the holiness all around us and be filled, taught, and changed at the feet of Jesus, even in the midst of all there is left to do. Amen. Well of Hope is an inclusive community of faith in the ELCA. We proclaim God's love for all. We create community through worship, study, and play, and we serve in love. If you want to be a part of this, sign up for our weekly email online here. Follow us on our social media, or stop by worship at 10 o'clock at New Hope Presbyterian Church. Go through the big wooden doors on the right. We look forward to seeing you.